Do you find yourself reaching for some food as you're rushing from one meeting or another, or when you're just about to start a new project, or maybe right when you walk in the door from work? In this video, we're going to talk about why that is and what you can do about it. I'm Katie Siefer, founder of Intuitive and Luscious Eating, and I help people make peace with food so they can maintain a healthy weight with ease and enjoy what they're eating more. So let's talk about why that happens. Well, when you think about what all those situations have in common, running from one meeting to another, just finishing up one project and you're about to start another, or just walking in the door from work, what they all have in common is that they're transitional moments. And there's two things that are usually going on when you're at a transitional moment. The first is that you often have a lot of unacknowledged feelings or thoughts or emotions about what you just finished. So if you're just finishing up one meeting, you had some thoughts and feelings about how that went. Or if you just finished up a project, you had some pushing that you had to do to kind of force yourself to finish it up. Or if you just walked in the door from work, usually you have some feelings about that, like you're really exhausted from your day and the drive home or the subway home was stressful, and there's just a lot going on for you. So that's the first thing. Usually there's some things that you felt about what you just finished that you don't really feel like you have time to process. The second is the flip side, where there's some feelings that you have about what you're about to do that you're not really giving yourself space to process. So maybe you just walked in the door and you know that you have to make dinner and clean your house and do all these other things, so you're exhausted before you even begin. Or you have to do all these other projects or go to all these other meetings and you're also sort of exhausted and don't feel like doing that. So there's things that you're about to do that you have some feelings and thoughts about. And at a high level, what's true about that is that if you have a lot going on under the surface that you're not giving yourself space to acknowledge, then you're going to need to kind of keep it down somehow. So some people will do some other kind of numbing thing, like they'll go on Facebook or they'll read something on their phone or they'll do something online real quick just to give them a jolt of some pleasure so that they can kind of keep all the negative feelings they're having down. But if you're somebody who struggles with food issues, then oftentimes that might mean that you go eat something a little quick to just give yourself some pleasure, frankly, numb yourself out a little bit so that you can move on with your day. I'm sure you already know this, but if you're using food not to deal with your hunger, but to deal with some sort of other deeper thing that's going on for you, you're never going to be able to really maintain a healthy weight without having to kind of micromanage it in other ways, like cut all carbs out of your diet or radically count your calories, because you're using food for things that food can't help with. If you're eating when you're not hungry, everything's just going to be harder for you. And these transition moments are key moments when you can reverse that trend. So let's talk about how you can do that. And in a lot of ways, it's easier than you think. The first thing is that you have to get good at acknowledging that transition moment. And I know that that can be really hard. And sometimes the only opportunity we have to acknowledge that it happened is after it's already happened. So you walked in the door, you ate a big handful of granola, and you're just like, oh, yeah, I was transitioning. I just ate a bunch of granola that I wasn't hungry for, and it's because I was transitioning. Or you realize that you just ate 3 biscotti that were kind of stale from your office pantry, and it's because you were running from meeting to meeting. So at first, you may just be able to acknowledge what's happened afterwards. But the goal is to begin to acknowledge what's happening as it's happening, or better yet, before. And when you begin to acknowledge it before, you can begin to notice what are your danger spots. So yeah, maybe running between meetings is a danger spot for you, and you can begin to plan for it. So that's number 1. The second thing that you can begin to do, which is really the most important thing, is begin to add practices to your life that give just a little bit of space in that transition moment. So rather than finishing up one project and then rushing to another project, you give yourself a little bit of space in that window to just acknowledge what's going on, which literally might just be, I'm so exhausted, I'm so tired of working, I didn't feel like doing that last project, and I don't feel like doing this next project. And that's okay. But the advantage of doing that is that when you acknowledge what's true for you in that moment, which might just be, I'm totally frustrated and exhausted, then you process it a little better because at least you're saying the truth to yourself versus pushing through your day. And two, you don't eat instead. You're not layering a food problem on top of the I'm just really stressed out problem. So your food problem begins to evaporate and not hurt you as much. And I want to also help you make this really actionable. So what do? How do you kind of give space to yourself in that moment? The most obvious thing to do is really to literally just sit down. Just sit down in a chair, take a few deep breaths, and feel how you're feeling in that moment. Some people like to take out a journal and write 3 lines, or if you're in a public place, you could write 3 lines on your phone. But even just sitting down and breathing and acknowledging in your own mind that you're exhausted and frustrated has the potential to make a huge impact. If you can acknowledge it in advance enough that you kind of know that you're about to hit a transition and it might be rough, sometimes taking a walk outside can be really helpful. I literally just did that this morning when I was transitioning from one thing to making these videos, and I realized I just wasn't quite ready. It wasn't that I was miserable. I wanted to make these videos, but I just needed some space to kind of slow down and acknowledge what was happening in my day. So just taking a 2-minute walk outside, weather permitting, is incredibly helpful. And I want to take a moment to acknowledge, because I bet there are some of you out there that are saying, yeah, that's really nice for you, Katie, but I'm really busy and I don't have time. And believe me, I've been there. I've had really stressful corporate jobs. And here's what I'll say. You can do it really simply and really quickly. You can go into an empty conference room. You can even go into a bathroom, which is not ideal, but doable, and just sit and think and feel for 30 seconds or 60 seconds or 90 seconds, and then move on to your day. And I know that that takes some time, but look, going into the break room or your office pantry and eating, a stale biscotti and a half, that takes 90 seconds too. So it probably doesn't take that much more time, and you've eliminated all those calories that you didn't even want in the first place. So that's my challenge and inspiration for you this week. I'd love to hear from you about what transition moments really trip you up and any techniques that you found useful for dealing with them. So I would love for you to leave comments below this video. And if you liked this content, there's a ton more at katiesiever.com. So I hope you'll check it out. And until next time.